Okay, so I've been thinking about this for a while, and every time I wrote something big, something serious, um, uh, what the show is about type script, I ended up realizing that that's not what I sound like at all. So I'm just going to talk to you. The room we're in is the room where this will all take place. I will sit more or less right here, and I'll be sat next to an artist, a songwriter, a mental health advocate, or clinician. But right now, it's just me. And that's important because if I'm bringing people in here to express themselves and talk about really deep, important subjects surrounding mental health, I feel like I should go first. My name is CJ Monaghan. I'm originally from England. And after many years of trials and tribulations in the United States, I finally reside here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I work as a professional musician, a songwriter, and now I guess a podcast host. A few years ago, I began my mental health healing journey, which led me down an interesting path of understanding myself, understanding my behaviors, understanding what my core beliefs really are. Little did I know that I would end up with a diagnosis of bipolar too. And for those of you unsure about what the differences are, I would implore you to look them up. That deserves its own episode, which is coming down the line. So keep an eye out for that. I have spent the last year, maybe a year and a half, exploring what this show means to me, what it means to others, whether they be participants, listeners, resource guidance people that are connected to the show itself. And all I know is that I had to lead with what I know is true. And that is there are many levels of mental health that are inaccessible to some people, whether that be their economic background, whether that be the situation that they're in at home, whether that be their own comfortability in sharing information about themselves. Feeling safe is important. That's what this room is about. No more, no less than a place for people to express their art, the meaning behind their art, and the meaning behind their own purpose. A few years ago, I went to a writer's round in Nashville. And for those of you outside of town, to understand what that is where multiple songwriters get on stage and they take turns playing songs, kind of usually in a line or around, the traditional formats. And each of them will play a song that they've either written with, let's say, somebody famous or somebody who became famous later on. Maybe a song they've written by themselves. It's just a personal love note to that feeling of writing a song by yourself. Either way, they take turns playing a song on stage. And in this particular event that I went to, there was a guy who, for me, felt out of place on this round. He had been a combat veteran. He had spent years dealing with PTSD from deployments. He'd lost friends to suicidality. And he took a pause between every song to talk about what that meant to him, to his friends, his peers, his former squad. And in that moment, it invited you into the headspace of where the song came from. I found myself leaning more into the song because I knew its meaning. But if anyone who's ever been to a writer's round understands, you only really get a few seconds to explain that before people just want the song to start. And I get that. No one wants to go to a bar to be lectured about anything. They want to go to be entertained, which I understand. Now, this guy wrote these songs, expressed those feelings in such an articulate way that he almost didn't need to explain the song. The song spoke for itself. But just that fraction of an insight nearly brought me to tears as he was singing. And he wasn't even the type of music that I would listen to, but I found myself connected to it through that story. Truth be told, it's a single instance that comes to mind first as to why I created Foreword. And there's been many. But creating this episode to move on with that show felt like, well, if I enjoy that story, surely more people do too. And for people to feel more seen, to feel more heard, is important. At least I believe so. Something missing from a writer's round that is quite frequent is checking in after the fact. And everybody likes to go over to the songwriters that they knew or the artists that they're trying to connect with in a networky kind of way. And they're like, oh my goodness, you're so good. You're so great. I love that song. That's incredible. Let me get your information. Let's write sometime. Let's go do these things. The type of topics that happen in Nashville. And in that one particular instance of the guy playing those songs, I went over and I shook his hand. And the first thing I said to him was about the last song that he played was, I'm sorry about your friend. And he stopped for a second and saw me and was like, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting you to say, hey, I love your music. Nice to meet you. So on and so forth. And no, I had to stop and recognize what he'd said. And I think in that moment he felt seen. I think it's important that we feel seen when it comes to battling different departments of mental health, let alone battling health providers for mental health support and resource. Because there's tons of free resources out there, but if you don't know where to go looking and you don't know the recommendations of who they're coming from, it's quite easy to be led down the wrong path. And I'm not to say that there's a right path, but there is certainly unhealthy and healthy ways to manage situations that you're in. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the first to do this. I'm probably not. But as somebody dealing with their own mental health issues, who's in the music scene in Nashville, I have a unique opportunity to reach a small subsect of people here to help share information with as wide a population as possible. I don't know all of these people. I've sent cold outreach emails to many of them and have been met with such a warm response because they felt this was important too. Something I want to say out loud, I don't think gets said enough about the music industry. The music industry profits from an artist's pain. That's been happening for a very long time. It's kind of the social contract that you sign when you accept a publishing deal, a record deal, a distribution deal, you sign on with a booking agent, whatever it may be. You have understood that this cathartic process you have created for releasing the energy of the issues that you faced is now commoditized. It's no longer yours. It's packaged and sold. And in the positive you take from that is, well, at least my message is being shared with the world. And that's true. That's critically important. I think everybody paying attention to this has had a song either say what they felt or even save their life. That's the power of what a 3.5 minute song can do for everybody. But if an industry is reliant upon that artist staying in their pain, that's unsustainable. And you've seen it. You've seen so many artists fall from grace with no safety nets. And they become vilified. They become memed away. The last thing that ends up breaking the news is somebody sitting with them to ask, hey, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? That happens maybe in a quiet therapy room on a couch not too dissimilar to this. What if we could spare one more person having to go through that? That felt noble to me, so I decided that it was my responsibility to do so. The premise of the show is pretty straightforward. It's me being the conduit to the conversation, an artist or a songwriter willing to share their work and their story and their mental health struggles, alongside a mental health clinician or advocate to help break down some of these concepts and at least point them in the right direction towards a healthy healing journey. Something that my guests are aware of before they arrive is a relatively lengthy intake form that I've provided to ensure that they understand the guardrails of this show. If you want to pull out at any point, you let me know, because vulnerability is hard. The amount of information you share with me is codependent on how the show on the day will go. You want to share lots of information up front? We can get into it. You want to share as little information as you want? We've got to find a way to get it out. The way that this is structured is important that people feel safe, but also understand the responsibility that they have to maybe save another life. Who knows? I know a lot of this information I'm sharing sounds heavy, because it is. And I cannot understate how important it is to ensure that it's done with clinical awareness and understanding the severity of some of these subjects. However, that doesn't mean we cannot laugh in this room and enjoy it and have fun. Because ultimately, it's one of the biggest healing factors you can have for anything going in your life is just a little humor. It goes a very, very long way. So I want to help maybe poke that bear in a different direction, just to ensure that we don't get too deep into the weeds with no way out and a corner that you cannot get out of. I'm hoping in some way that this show reaches people who use music as their emotional infrastructure. People who relate to music and say the music is my therapy. It is. It's capable of doing that. It's such a unifying thing that has predated history. I made it for that person. And in turn, it's for the songwriter who feels bold enough to be here and do that for someone else. For the advocates and clinicians who feel that there is an untapped resource in art, in music, in culture, that they haven't been able to access the creative mind because they are unique. This room right here is going to hear some stuff. That's true. It's going to hold conversations with the utmost importance in emboldening others to seek out their own mental health journeys. And when it's all said and done, we take about 20 to 30 minutes to bring the temperature of the room down, ensure that everybody's okay, because the last thing you want to do is drive home when you're in a heightened state of emotion, and go home with resource guidance that you can use when you get there. I don't know if I'll ever see that veteran again. So it's important that other people's stories continue that vulnerability at the forefront. Share it with others and maybe save someone's life. So welcome. This is Foreword and the Foreword Show. And I'm really glad you're here.